Cool.
Because that's a lot of shit. Okay, Brian, you have a really good back, so come here. First off,
Start with blues. Start at the beginning.
okay. First off, back up now, please. This is a blue.
What makes it a blue?
This?
Yes.
What makes it a blue?
This is a blue. Anything under indag, anything under 48 inches is a blue. Blue means a lot of different things. Indag, obviously. One being you can break armor with one hit, and then your second hit would go through. Make sense? Okay. Now, how you would check a sword out of basics. First, you start at the pommel, at least I do. Start at the pommel, make sure it's fine.
What's fine?
The pommel. It's not going to fall off, twist off. Storm's going to see this, so he's going to laugh the whole fucking time. Okay. So, I don't care if the pommel's made out of 10 pounds, 6 pound, 8 pound, 4 pound, 2 pound. As long as the end is 2 inches in diameter, in diameter, round. I didn't bring my template. So that means it can not fit through a 2-inch hole. Now when you're checking for that, and you have a template and an event, do not try to force a pommel even if you don't like the person, because I know people. Do not try to force the pommel through to fail their weapon, because then it gets brought back to one of us and we have to add tape and it's just a hassle. So just set it on top of the template. It'll be a piece of wood about this big, or metal, or whatever, about a 1/2 inch thick. And that, set it on top. If it doesn't fall through, that part passes. Check, make sure there's no core. You don't have to dig in there. That's how you tear people's shit up. Make sure your pommel's not gonna fall off. Handle, self-explanatory. All blue weapons and red weapons in DAG, not green, have to be 2/3 padded. That's why you see this is a red, and it's 2/3 padding, even though this is half padding. So when you go up to here, you feel, and you do this quickly, but not too quick. Just feel if there's any divots, any tears, any rips. Make sure there's stabby tips there. Do not be one of those guys who grab this tip and crank and twist to see if it's going to twist. Just see if it's off the cord off. Now, Brian, come here. This way. Think. Okay. So put your hand right here.
Okay.
So I don't hit you in the kidney. Okay, and then that. So
Why are his hands like that?
safety,
For?
him, not for me.
Covers the kidney and the top of your vertebrae.
Yeah. And also, if I hit him right here, he'll test the flex.
Got it.
Yeah. Can't break 45 degrees or it fails. But say light, medium, hard. Now, you traditionally would flip this over and do the other side because it's a blade. Would you pass that as a hit?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna stab you.
Okay.
Light, medium, hard. Would you pass that as a stab?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how you test a blue weapon.
Let's just do blues today. Let's keep it simple.
Just blues?
Just blues today.
Okay.
So do want to elaborate on it a little bit more. So the the big thing when you're testing blues, and you
Are
can do
still videotaping?
yeah, you can do it with a partner, you can do it by yourself. Most time when you're at a weapons check, you're gonna see people testing blue weapons by themselves. And to do that, it's just the same thing. Instead of hitting someone else, you just hit yourself. Normally it's in a leg. Alternate legs if you want to, so one doesn't get too numb. But it's just nice, you know, the light should be like what would be just under a legal hit.
Yep.
Like this isn't a light hit. Like no one's gonna take that. It needs to be light, like this, a little bit under. Medium should be like that's a solid hit everywhere you go to play games. And then hard is supposed to be, by the rule book, as hard as you can swing.
Now, if I swung as hard as I could swing, I'd break. I guess what? I'm not gonna do that.
Maybe. But by the rule book, it's as hard as you can swing. Because I can pick up someone else's sword and swing as hard as I want. It doesn't matter how that was checked. Yes.
I want to specify you don't count light hits as a hit, right? If in a game.
Correct. So if it's light, you call light. Like that's nothing. Hopefully the person who swung will call it back. But if not, you can always say it's light. It's an honor game, and your calibration is your calibration now. The goal is everyone have the same calibration. But it's not always that way, and so we talk and try and work our way through all that stuff.
Yeah.
But light should be just below a normal hit. Medium is good everywhere, and then hard should be as hard as you can swing. But as hard as you can swing at your leg, not really that hard, but sufficient to see that, yeah, that's not going to leave bruises, break bones. But stabs you always have to do on someone else. It's because you can't really get a good angle on yourself.
It's not really good. So, do you want me to demonstrate an actual hard hit?
Okay.
I did tell you I worked out my back yesterday. And,
So-
my back is sore from working out. I slept on my leg at least
Yeah.
3 times today.
I got it. You hear me?
Okay. So,
This is a nice
Light.
sword. That's fine.
medium,
That's good.
hard. And when you do a hard, you act like you're gonna follow through.
Right.
That's generally. I'm not doing as hard as I want because I don't want to break this.
There's carbon.
It's very expensive. So this is an Omni bat. It has the exact
away the
same
whole time.
rules as that sword. I did not explain
Just need to
this.
hear what he's saying.
I did not explain this. It cannot. 2.5 inch hole.
What if it's not stabbing?
If it's not stabby, it's a 2 inch hole. So if you can have a 2 inch thin as fuck,
You can have a 2-inch thin as fuck sword.
thin as fuck sword like
not
that.
stab legal.
Not stab legal. And so basically, any weapon checker you're gonna go to, is gonna have a block of wood, piece of aluminum, whatever. It's always gonna be a circle. So, do any of you, we're still in Blizz, do any of you know the maximum length of a chain on a flail?
6 inches.
6 inches. Okay, do you know how that's the exact, if you do not have a way to test that through measuring scale, like a tape measure, no.
Dollar finger.
Dollar bill,
Huh?
6 inches.
6 inches, dollar bill.
A whole dollar?
Yep. Long ways.
Obviously.
Do you know how much gap you can have between dingleberries?
Half inch.
Can you specify that? You just said dingleberries while doing this.
Down there.
It's the foam around the chain on a flail.
Okay.
So, if I was a decent weapons checker, I would take these
Are you saying you're not?
and I would do that. And I'd be like, okay, that looks good. Now, if I was a dick, I would say that fails. Because that is a lot of exposed. But that I just compressed all those. Generally, that's not going to happen.
And that's really regionally. There's not a rule in the rule book about,
There's no rule about it.
about space between dingleberries, but it falls under safety. Like if you can wrap that all the way around your finger without any foam on it, that's too much.
Do you know how wide the end of a dag legal flail needs to be?
2.5.
Nope.
2.
2.
It's not stacked.
Not stabby.
Well, it's not stabby anyways.
Well, but,
So do you know how big the ball? Okay, I'm not gonna go by circumference because that shit's dumb and old school, and I don't care who
16
disagrees.
Then it sounds braggy.
No. Okay. So do you know how many inches from here to here it needs to be?
looks like birth.
3.5.
I don't remember.
From here to here, you think that's 3.5?
4.
5.
No, it's not 5.
5.
Has to be 16 inches in diameter.
16 inches in diameter or 5.1 inches.
16 inches. That 5.1 is not in the rule book.
It's not, but that's what I would
16
go.
inches. You gotta be able to take tape measure.
So eventually we're gonna come up with templates that have 5.1 inch diameter holes.
Laser cut.
Is there anything I'm missing? If we're just doing blues.
Covered pommels, covered handles,
Oh,
covered striking surfaces.
smart shit.
Didn't talk about striking surfaces for the
So, if I covered this bitch completely in Gorilla Tape, would it pass?
Nope.
No.
Should
Duct
pass.
tape.
No.
Tyvek tape.
What the fuck is
Yes.
Yes, it would.
that? I don't even know what that
packing
is.
tape.
Thank you.
Would a
Huh.
sock work? Literally, like would a sock work?
Yes, a sock would pass.
What
He's
about-
covering- he's talking about under a cover.
Under the cover.
Sorry.
And technically, any of those will pass because you're not supposed to take the cover off to check a weapon.
Yes.
If it passes a hit test, it passes. It shouldn't.
Now, if I see someone who has, which I have seen, I'm not going to say what vendors or whatever, and I failed it. It's like it's packing tape, but it has the fiberglass strands through it. I failed it. Didn't even test it
Like on the striking surface they have?
on the striking surface. But just out of principle, you need it's sealing tape. Tyvek seals. You have to look for that specific word. You go to Lowe's, you find Lowe's
Flex tape.
generic Tyvek tape. What?
What about flex tape?
It would fail.
So by the rules,
Same as
your
electrical tape,
sword
by the
should
way.
be created with as minimum tape as possible.
Minimum.
If minimum for you is tape all the way up and down, that's your minimum, but it's probably going to fail check. But once you have that cover on, if it passes a hit test, and everything else is good.
It really is just like as long as it
Yeah.
passes the hit test.
Yeah. So if I stab you and you feel core,
Without core, that hurts.
then I have to go back over it after I already finger fucked it, and then I feel, oh shit, there is core. I messed up. Just simple stuff like that. What else am I missing?
Just the big things when you are checking, pommels and tips of swords.
Mhm.
Don't dig your thumb in. Don't
Nope.
dig your fingers in. Flatter your thumb, or just flatter your fingers. Do you feel core? You don't want to like dig a divot just all the way across. Do you feel anything? Same thing on stabby tips. Flatten your hand, full finger, just to give it a push down. See if it compresses into something. That's not going to catch everything. That's why I also do a hit test as opposed to the hands as well. Because the hit test will get to compress a little bit more, and if that fails, then you can get a little bit more vigorous in your testing. But you don't want to start with that and then break a weapon, and that's the reason it fails because you broke it.
No, this is biased. There's nothing in the rule that says you have to. Is there something in the rule that I haven't read that says you have to have 2 pound on the end of your palm?
No, it has to be padded.
Okay, has to be padded. Feel this right here. That's 2 pound. Feel that. You know what 2 pound feels like. £4.
That's thick.
Now feel this right here.
It's still really thick.
That was like no budge, nothing, hard as a rock. That's 6 pounds. If you feel that hard in our realm while you're checking a pommel, in my personal preference, do not pass it.
Correct. It's the same thing with like a striking surface on a sword. Same
4
thing on a
pound is the
pommel.
highest I will go.
Like it needs to be padded, but it doesn't have to be like couch cushion soft. It just needs to not injure. Like if I'm gonna come up and swing a sword at this guy, and I do this, I shouldn't hurt him. And with the super hard pommels, like those 6 pound pommels, 10 pound pommels,
10.
that's a little hard. That's like getting hit with a brick.
7
for sure.
pommels are all 10
I thought his was 6.
No.
Who even buys 10 at that point? Where do you
Apparently
get that
him.
from? Center of the moon? Mining operation?
Okay.
But those are the big things. One of the other thing is when you do help a weapons check, most weapons templates, say 90% of the ones I've seen in 15 years of playing are half-inch thick.
Yes.
And they're half-inch thick, so that way when you sit a template onto a pommel, if it goes through it all, it fails.
Yes.
Because by the rules, if it goes through a template through that hole, half an inch, it fails. So that's why everybody has half-inch templates, so you can sit it on. If it goes through at all, it fails.
Now, can I say something out of cockiness?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. If you go to a realm and then they have a piece of cardboard taped together 1/2 inch, and then your pommel falls right through, or if they just take a piece of blue foam and do it like that, don't be mean.
Just ask for clarification.
Ask for clarification. And if you can't get it, and that is the highest person in that realm that is trying to clarify that, it is what it is. Try to educate. That's the best I can say it, because I've experienced it.
Anybody else have questions on checking a blue weapon?
I guess the only question that came to mind was, don't you have to check the template to make sure that the pommel doesn't hit the eye socket or something like that?
That's
That's why the template
So the
is what it
2 inch.
is.
that's
Yeah,
the 2 inch.
yeah, yeah.
2 inch.
Right.
Yeah.
And less than half an inch.
I'm not going to take his weapon and check your actual eye.
Yeah, but that's what it.
You'll
That's
stab
what-
your eye out.
Yeah, that's what the 2 inches is.
And same with the sword tip as well. The 2 inch, 2.5 inch tip.
Question, big question.
What about daggers?
Okay, so this is actually a very good point. This is a blue.
Small blue. Yeah.
Not all daggers are blue.
Not all daggers are blue. This is a blue.
That's true.
This right here,
Both numbers.
it has to be 18 inches
Or under.
or under
So not my dick.
to not have weight in it. To make it as... Brian, shut up.
Been waiting to say
to
that all
not
day.
have weight in it, essentially. Still has to follow all the other blue rules. Except for Dag and Bell only have one discrepancy, and that's the handle. And normally, because
Also, theirs is like 21 inches.
is it 21?
It's
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, that's why I brought that bat out one day, and you guys were like, I was like, no.
Yeah. So, in Dag, we don't have that. Just for this weapon, we don't have that rule.
What rule?
The 2/3 padded rule. Now, if you look at this is still 2/3 padded. I will say that.
Do you want to clarify?
Okay.
It has to be at least 2/3 because you have to have at least a 12 inch or 6 inch striking surface.
This is.
I lied. Ignore me.
It's
It's like it has to be at least a 12 inch striking surface. It doesn't. It's 6 inches.
It's 6 inches. So it doesn't have to technically follow that rule.
But you do it.
It's in the rule books. It's mucky. I don't like it, but they haven't said anything else about it. Yes.
So when you're checking blues that are flat like that one, is there anything that you need to check for the non-striking surface?
No, so if I'm checking the tip, I'm feeling like this. See when you come up like this, you make sure that this
I mean,
is
like
all.
the flat. Is there anything
No,
you need to check
no.
for the flat? Okay, that's all.
Yes. The only thing you're checking though is make sure the core is not coming through.
Okay.
Like
like when
you just take your fingers down the middle and you'll you'll most likely you won't feel a seam. But if you feel a seam that's open, can we technically take off the cover at that point if you feel a seam that's open and you feel core to check?
And if you feel core, it fails.
Yeah, I'd
That's
fail
Or
the
do we
crap
just
out of
fail
that.
it?
if you feel core, it fails.
Okay.
Yeah. Same thing like when you get up to the tip when you're checking stabbies. Same thing on the flats. Don't dig in. Don't like try
Yeah.
to fold it over.
Don't
It's just
don't twist. Don't.
You're pushing, making sure you don't feel.
Guessing a lot of
You
people do
can,
that.
and it will.
Pop it.
Right, because it's
Twist
real
it.
easy just to rip this off.
Pull it.
Now, in blues, generally we don't check for flex unless they are above 40 inches. If you see somebody with a 70 or a 47-inch blue, I'm gonna check it like a red. I'm just saying.
But like all other swung weapons, 45 degrees.
Yep, 45 degrees.
There's not a surefire way to check that in dagger here yet. Some realms have
I do not have
some
anything
wooden
that would.
mechanisms with some paint lines drawn, and you can strike your sword on
And
it. It's kind of like doing it on a
it's
shield. If
Inconsistent.
you have a cord shield, you can strike it on and see if it goes 45. But it's inconsistent,
Yeah.
and it can really change based on like height of the person swinging. Because if
Right.
they're swinging here, you know, it's already at 45, and it's flat for me. Flat. Flex is subjective.
I've seen people have black markets and those that he has right there that I make. I forgot the name of, but Certus Vengeance go 45, 30, 39, like all over the space on those scales, where different people will come back and be like, "Oh, can you check this? I want to make sure it's not, failing." Like.
Most of the time, it just happens on old swords. Like you could probably find another reason to fail them, but cores get a little old, they get a little flexy.
And if you find a weapon that it just looks like it's been beat to shit, you kind of want to look for a reason to fail it. Don't be a dick about it though. Like you just kind of like how I felt your weapon.
Right.
I was like, they failed it at Wolfpack. I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna fail. So I'm looking, I'm feeling, and then I actually really go over it, and then I feel the divot in the hole. You kind of want to make sure of that because if it's old and beat to shit, you want to make sure it's really safe before you let it out there. But you also want to do it quick enough to get a shit ton of weapons out there because at O's, you'll be handed tons and tons and tons. People will drop off as many weapons right here in one duffel bag and expect you to check them and expect you to back for them and not do anything.
Yeah, but like a full speed check, you get a sword. By the time we're doing this, you'll be hopefully well versed enough to know that this is not 48 inches, and it feels like it makes weight.
Yep.
So I get a sword, pommel's good, foam is good, tip is secure. That's good. And you got someone kind of stab you.
Up or back?
You get a light. Is that good?
Mhm.
Medium,
You give me hard.
hard.
Yes.
And at that point, if it passes, give it off to get stickered next sword. It should take less than 30 seconds to check a blue sword.
Yes.
If it's legal. If there's questions about it, it's going to take
Like
longer.
this is how quick you can do it. And then stab someone and then be done.
You did bring up one thing that hadn't been mentioned. What is the minimum weight?
Minimum weight 12 ounces on a blue.
If it's
Except
over, if it's over 18.
for this.
Which has no,
Has no-
because
I have
it's
a
under
question.
18
Yeah.
inches.
So, because you're teaching us this, does that mean anyone can like test a sword? Like anyone you give, like
Absolutely.
not just
so,
in our realm, but like when you go.
yeah, so if you're at an event and say you get there early and you want to do something to help the game or help the event
Go
run,
ask them.
you can go ask to help volunteer weapons check. Or even at our events, come volunteer weapons check because
We would
everybody's
love for you to come help
They need
us.
backs.
really anybody will. They're gonna mostly they're gonna want backs, but especially if they're undermanned, ask them if we could help clarify how they're checking things. Most people should be doing it the same way. Some realms have special rules, but if you have a basic understanding how to check a weapon, you can help at any event you go to. And that's awesome because when you help, I mean someone else gets a little break, people stay fresher, and then safe weapons get on the field. Because when you get people with dead backs because they've been there all day, they're failing stuff that shouldn't, and they're passing things that they do pass because their back is numb and they just can't feel anymore.
Example.
That's pretty true.
3 years ago. 3 years ago, we were testing weapons on Storm's back. I don't know who did it. Someone swung a core on his back.
Oh.
And he passed it. The next year, I did the exact same thing to Mikey after testing like 30 weapons on his back in a row. And he passed it.
Like just a core.
Yes, just like it was a weapon that someone got shitty that was tore up, shredded it, laid it on the table. They were gonna come back. I picked it up. It was Kite Spar, and I just was like, and he's like, "Good."
Let's see. Checker, check.
That's why you want fresh bats.
Quality control.
And with that, how we do most of our weapons checks when you go to our events, we should have teams of 3 at weapon check. Whether it's 1 team, 2 teams, 10 teams. So that way you always have someone that you can check with, so you can alternate backs if you need to. And you have someone you can hand a sword to tape the weapon if it passes, and give it back. Some realms you go to, they're going to put a big pile, like
Literally the
Wolfpack.
whole realm.
Yeah, they're going to put everything on that pile, and then an hour later, if you were there early, you can come back and maybe your sword will be checked.
Maybe.
How we like to do most of our weapons checks is you bring your weapons to us, we check it, we tape it, and we give it back to you.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about piles. You get your weapon in the order you brought it up, and there's a lot less chance you're going to lose your sword at weapon check.
Did you got any of you were at war last year?
Yeah,
Okay. You saw how we had lines.
it was awesome.
Projectile was over here. We try to keep shields over here, and reds and blues over here, and Javies went with projectiles, I believe.
Bring your shields with you too.
But regardless, we just want to make it as quick as possible.
Yep.
You can check a shield quicker than you can check a blue. You can't have spikes on your shields. It pisses me off. It's in the rule book. I can pull it up and show you. But if I see someone with a spike, a pyramid spike that still passes through the 2-inch hole, I'm gonna fail it.
Absolutely. That's just a safety thing. The first rule in the rule book is safety, common
Yeah.
sense. Like if it's something that someone has tried to put a loophole or
Mhm.
work the system,
Always look for loopholes because people will.
trying to work the system, like fail it. That's your prerogative as a weapons checker to make sure everything on that field is safe. And if you think that weapon isn't safe, fail it.
And if someone gets shitty about it, bring it to one of us. Anybody who has knowledge of a lot of weapons, and we will fail it probably, most likely too, if it failed.
And that's the biggest thing is when you are doing weapons check, especially at our events. Most likely it'll be Siegfried, Storm, or myself running the weapons check. If you are failing it for a specific reason, and someone gets mad or shitty about it, bring it to us, explain the reason. Like if it's rule book, if it fails, we're gonna back you.
Yes.
If it doesn't, we're gonna have a little teaching moment.
Yep.
But we're still gonna back you most of the time because we trust our weapons checkers to make good decisions.
And we want you to be weapons checkers, which makes it easier to trust our people and not have to have so many other people brought in that we don't know from other realms that might check weapons differently, and they might fail a bunch of weapons that shouldn't have got failed, or might pass a bunch of weapons that shouldn't have got passed. So that's the reason we're teaching you.
And the more familiar you get, the better it is.
I was gonna say this is probably the most in-depth weapons check seminar I've ever had. Thank you.
They're gonna happen every practice until
Yeah.
O's.
Next time, if we're gonna do it if I'm gonna do it like this, we're gonna go over every detail of a red next time.
And that is fine. That's cool with us.
But
Learned
that's
a
good
lot.
on the video. You can stop.
Be aware that like realms